Coming up on episode 52 of Fresh Freedom, we're talking government secrecy, whistleblowers, and UAP transparency with Kirk McConnell, who spent nearly 4 decades as a professional staff member on Capitol Hill. Welcome to the Fresh Freedom Podcast, featuring freedom-focused representatives who are fighting for conservative values and defending your constitutional rights. I'm Nate Lucas, joined as always by Representative Eric Burleson from Missouri's 7th Congressional District, and our special guest is Kirk McConnell. Mr. McConnell spent nearly 4 decades as a professional staff member on Capitol Hill, serving the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Senate Intel Committee, and the House Intelligence Committee. He now serves on the advisory board of the UAP Disclosure Fund, focusing on classification, transparency, and whistleblower protections. They don't usually let me sit at a table with such distinguished individuals, so thank you.
Well, this is kind of the first, I think, UAP Fresh Freedom podcast I think that we've actually done that's been somewhat related to this topic. So I think we talked a little bit about it when Tim Burchett was on a couple of years ago, but yeah, this is it's kind of long overdue.
We were just discussing before we started, the role of Congress and the oversight and your whole responsibility with all of that. But when it comes to UAPs, I would imagine that both of you get a lot of questions like, why UAPs? What's driving that focus?
As you say, I worked for a long time in Congress. I am an institutionalist. I believe in the importance of Congress and the role it plays in oversight of the executive branch. And if the reports that Congress has been hearing for quite some time are accurate, namely that the executive branch has conducted so-called legacy UAP programs without informing Congress, I think that's an unconstitutional situation. Congress has a right to know, represents the people of the United States, and certainly classified or sensitive information needs to be protected, but certainly Congress has the right to be informed on behalf of the American people. So that's step number one in this disclosure campaign, is to ensure that Congress knows everything that the executive branch knows about this topic.
Yeah, for me, that's exactly why I'm involved. It really strikes at the core of, are we still a republic? Are we still a constitutional republic? And does this government, do the people own this government? And they elect their representatives and trust. We're essentially the trustees of the public's political power and will, if you will. But if that's not the case, and we are operating in a world in which the intelligence community, the military, whatever branches are going rogue and just deciding themselves who should be receiving information and who shouldn't, then to me, that's why this really strikes a very strong chord with me, that we have to kind of bring oversight back over this.
I was listening to some podcasts that you have done previously, and you used the phrase, the firsthand accounts are jarring. You said that they can make it hard to fall asleep at night. I know that you've had whistleblowers reach out to you personally. You've hired David Grush as a special advisor to help out on this particular topic. So can you guys give, the everyday normal American, like, what these firsthand accounts sound and look like?
Well, it's there haven't been a large number of these sources, but there's been a not a negligible number either. And I will only repeat what then Senator Marco Rubio said, now obviously Secretary of State, that we've had, credible people, both former and currently serving, with high-level security clearances and a career to protect, and they are trustworthy people. They have responsible positions, and they certainly came across as being responsible and credible, who have told senators that there is, in fact, a legacy program that goes back a long time, and that there were, crash recoveries and reverse engineering activities going on for a long time that Congress has never been informed of, at least certainly not officially. And it is, it's sort of you have to question everything that you thought you knew, and your worldview has to change to get your head around it. At least for me, I was not into UFOs or UAP prior to that. I, along with most other people, thought it was almost a matter of a laughingstock. But when the New York Times came out with that article in late 2017, and there was a lot of information in those stories about Navy pilots and the things that they were encountering, and the staff on the committee I worked for, along with staff from the Senate Intelligence Committee, we started talking to those pilots, and the things we heard from them was also quite compelling. So this, we kept at it, and there's a very credible basis for believing this. I don't know, I don't have any idea how much the government does know, what progress they may have made, but I feel fairly confident, as do some senators, that this is real.
And you've like in your role, working kind of this committee staffer behind the scenes, if you will, you've had a lot of conversations and interactions, and just those, when people come forward, I don't know if you can describe that, like how you kind of bridge that relationship and gain trust, and what kind of protections are available to some of these witnesses.
Well, the protections that they have in these sessions that I was a party to are they were relying on the staff and the members to not expose them. Frankly, they were very nervous about that and very concerned. So, there are whistleblower protections, obviously, but those also kick in when someone officially becomes a whistleblower, we only had I guess a couple of those. I guess you could call Lou Elizondo a whistleblower, and certainly Dave. But others who came to talk to us were not official whistleblowers. They wanted to remain anonymous, and they were really scared and really nervous about doing that. And they're really worried about their career, and even whether they're right or not, they certainly believed, some of them, that their personal safety and that of their family was at risk in this. It's serious business.
Almost terrifying. I mean, and is there enough of, whistleblower protections? Has Congress done enough to give whistleblowers protection so that they will come forward?
Look, I'm speaking personally about this. My own view is that the answer to that is no. Whistleblowers in general on any topic. I think the record is not great about how they fare when they come forward to report wrongdoing, waste, fraud, and abuse, whatever it is. And in this case, it would be the government withholding information from Congress. So, their career tends to suffer. It's my impression.
They don't get promoted anymore.
They don't get promoted.
They may not keep their job.
Yeah, they can lose their jobs. They can lose their security clearance, and their
benefits.
Yeah.
Pension.
which is tantamount to if you lose your security clearance for people who work in national security, that's tantamount to ending your career. So what can be done, and there's also just any number of ways that people in the executive branch can retaliate against whistleblowers that are difficult to prove in court. So this is
they could
why
mess with their finances.
Yeah.
They could, information could be, nefarious information can be leaked, compromising information.
Yeah, there's. You saw what happened to Dave Grush. There was a leak about personal information about him.
Yeah.
There was, threats to his security clearance. I've observed this over my decades of government service that the government bureaucracies use security as a weapon. If someone is not even towing the, what I'd call the party line in the executive branch on some important issue, people will levy charges of security violations. And boy, something like that, it triggers investigations. It can trigger suspensions of your clearance. I think that the deck is stacked against you in defending yourself against things like that. And it's remarkably easy for people to levy charges of mishandling of this or that kind of information. So it's the protections are not what they ought to be. I've even toyed around personally with the idea that Congress should adopt some kind of restitution fund or something to enable people who have been retaliated against. If Congress agrees that, it looks to us like that's true, to be able to compensate them for loss of their livelihood. But it's difficult, and it's hard to single out the whistleblowers for much greater protections on this topic, when other whistleblowers in other areas wouldn't get the same protections. So, the argument is you need to give the same protections to everybody. So it's a difficult issue for Congress to wrestle with.
What about the overclassification? And it seems like even as a member of Congress, it's a constant maze to figure out what clearance you need to get into those SCIFs. And what determines the level of when they classify something? And when you're thinking about just UAPs, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but is there a huge national security threat with UAPs?
Some have made the argument that the concept or the intelligence about there being non-human intelligence is not something to classify, because it's not a secret of this government. It's a universal knowledge. That's when I sat down with Arrow, that's what they said. That's the way they see it. That being said, what they will do is they will classify any kind of videos or photos or anything like that was used that might compromise so for example, the system that took the video, the system itself is classified. Therefore, whatever the system records is classified. And those are the kind of things that end up being our obstacles.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. Even if what you're taking a picture of, let's say, isn't classified, the camera that took the picture is classified. I will say that there's been concern about, the first videos that were released that were ultimately, as I understand it, found to be unclassified. This was in connection with the New York Times articles back in 2017. The government ended up agreeing that they were unclassified, but then relatively quickly, Chris Mellon in particular has really hammered this point. the government drew up new classification guidelines, and if those videos had been taken under the new classification guides, they would have been classified. So in a way, we've seemed to have maybe taken a step backwards here. The reason for this overclassification is, I think, part of what you're getting at is everybody wants to play it safe. So you don't want to make a mistake and underclassify something, and you can get in trouble for that, and understandably so. But there's also the interests of avoiding embarrassment, like if something is out in the press that's maybe not classified, but is embarrassing to the government in some way. There's an incentive to maybe fudge it a little and make it classified. Mm-hmm. So there are multiple reasons for this overclassification. In addition, it takes work to really parse what is classified and what in many cases, what is classified legitimately and what is not, and borderline cases, and the work to sort that out is not insubstantial. And so, a lot of decisions are made to just default to classification and a higher one rather than a lower one at that.
And sometimes they'll use this, whatever it's classified, the topic, because of its classification level, as a reason to not talk about it, even to members of Congress. So in a SCIF, for example, I've been in a SCIF briefing where they've said, well, this briefing is not at that classification level, so we can't talk about that. We're only at the top secret level, right? We're not at the TSSCI compartmentalized, for that program level. And it just gets confusing. It really gets confusing. If you haven't worked in that world, it's really hard to navigate. And so I think that's that's by design, is to make it confusing so that, rank and file member like myself has no idea, doesn't even know what questions to ask.
The classification and access to classification of information and access to information is an important example of, we talk about the separation of powers that the founding fathers pursued as a principle when constructing the framework for our government. But it's also, there's an awful lot of shared powers, and access to sensitive information, national security information, is a prime example of that. The President of the United States, historically, as well as the President's lawyers, have always argued that the President has total control, plenary is a term that they use, over the access to classified information. And that means that the President even reserves the right, in principle, under his inherent Article II authorities as Commander-in-Chief, to keep information from Congress. Congress, on the other hand, under its Article I authorities, has the responsibility for oversight and to make laws and allocate funds and the like, and as a result of that, must have access to all information that it needs to do its job. So Congress insists on its right to have access to all this information. The President reserves the right to deny access to Congress on certain topics. The courts have never wanted to intervene in this because each branch of government has a strong prima facie case, and this is what they term a political question between the two branches of government, and don't like to try to decide this because it can't really decide in favor of one or the other. So the judicial branch expects Congress and the executive branch to work these out. And Congress has and the executive branch have largely done that. I mean, we have laws on the books that provide mechanisms for reporting sensitive topics to Congress. Covert action statutes regarding what has to be reported to Congress and how soon. There's statutory language about the framework for how the government shares compartmented information in special access programs with the Armed Services Committees and the Intelligence Committees and the Appropriations Committees and so on. But it is important, I think, to note that the group that I am advising and sort of representing here today has done legal analysis and has yet to find a case where a whistleblower, if you will, from the executive branch or a contractor working for the executive branch who brings classified information to Congress in a secure setting has ever been indicted, much less prosecuted or much less convicted for sharing information with Congress in an appropriate setting that has been withheld from Congress. So this is something which potential whistleblowers may want to keep in mind. Because
how bad would it look if the administration goes after someone for telling Congress what Congress should know?
Yeah,
right.
The nerve.
Then that would be pretty. I mean, it would be a political problem for that administration.
Sir, I think you're completely right. I think they would be in a bind, standing before a court and saying, yes, Your Honor, it's true. We kept this information from Congress, but we're gonna prosecute this individual for sharing that information with Congress, even though we've told Congress for 80 years that no such information existed.
Right.
It's a pretty tough argument to make.
Right. Well, and if there was no there, then why are we even having the court hearing?
Yeah.
Right. Why are we prosecuting somebody for talking about something that didn't exist? Or
they're prosecuting someone for telling Congress about something that doesn't exist. I don't think they would be doing that.
Right.
Right. So.
Well, there aren't too many topics or areas that are bipartisan any longer in Congress, but it does seem like this might be the only thing that you and Senator Chuck Schumer agree on in the world.
Yeah.
So if you can get you two together on that.
Yeah. And I've got the national, the UAP Disclosure Act. I have it as an amendment to, we will be finding out this week if that makes it
through the
Rules Committee and is made in order, and then we'll see if it passes. I think it will pass because this is a bipartisan issue. The question is, will they kick it out in rules, and which they've done in the past, and who has their fingerprints on getting it kicked out in rules.
And just to clarify, that amendment would prohibit the destruction or alteration of UAP records. It would create a records collection at the National Archives, establish an independent UAP records review board, and require public disclosure of those records within 25 years unless the president certifies a clear national security reason for delay. So that would be a breakthrough amendment if it hopefully does indeed get through.
Yeah, and hopefully I get it in on the House side, and if not, I think Chuck Schumer, I mean, again, it's crazy to me that Chuck Schumer and I have something in common, but he is going to offer that language on the Senate side. So hopefully one way or another we get it on there, and then it stays. It will have to stay through conference.
Yes, sir.
Well, we are just about out of time, but there is a huge hearing this week with the declassification task force and this next UAP hearing. But I don't think the public appetite seems to only be growing in this topic. And when you have somebody who has an audience size like Joe Rogan discussing this topic on the norm, I mean, people they would just want to know what's going on and why is the government hiding things from us? It's fascinating.
Right. Or I want to know, as what was said, for example, that Sean Kirkpatrick and others alluded to, or Tim Phillips alluded that there is nothing there. In fact, if anything, it's a misinformation campaign to make people believe that there's aliens from another planet, that these things are non-human intelligence. If that's the case, and I'm willing to accept that, then now you have to answer to me, why are you lying to the American people? Why are you creating a deception campaign? You know, that to me raises even just as equal concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Congressman, thank you very much, Mr. McConnell. Great to have you on Fresh Freedom with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
You can catch Fresh Freedom across all podcast platforms. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stand strong, stay informed, and keep fighting for freedom.